Welcome to the RobatDesk podcast. I'm Ron Blasi. I'm with Dr. or Coach Jeff Duke. What do you prefer, Doctor or Coach?
Jeff.
Just Jeff?
Jeff, yeah. If you have to have a title, no doubt Coach, no doubt.
Yeah.
The doctor stuff is fine for, I teach university and I tell kids all the time, out of respect, you need to call me doctor because that's just out of respect. And then people I don't like. So, yeah, Coach is good. Or Jeff.
Okay,
Jeff.
Perfect. And so you started a platform or an institute with 3D coaching. First, what's your background with coaching and what got you interested in that?
Well, I'm that typical kid who grows up in the American culture, just, love sport growing up. I grew up in South Florida and I was, best thing I can tell you, I was a overachiever.
Oh, yeah?
It's a nice word for saying you're not all that good of an athlete. So you tried really hard.
Yeah.
And, so, I played a little high school ball, a little bit of college ball, but I knew I wanted to, I really did kind of fall in love with coaching early on. It was just something very intriguing. Watching teams growing up in South Florida. I'll tell you how old I am.
Okay.
People they'll turn off the podcast after they hear this. I went to Super Bowl II.
Wow.
2, like one after 2. I was 12 years old. It was in the Orange Bowl, which is no longer there. And my dad, the Orange Bowl was kind of my little sanctum for where I would go see the Orange Bowl game. It's where I would see teams like Oklahoma and Nebraska in the Orange Bowl game every year.
Oh, yeah.
And so, anyways, he goes,
or Miami when they were in there.
Yeah,
I'm a big Miami fan. So
are you really?
My aunt and uncle live in Miami. Been indoctrinated from a young age.
Yeah, give up to you. I grew up a big Canes fan when nobody was a Canes fan. That's many years ago. It was hilarious. So my dad goes, they didn't even call it Super Bowl II. The second was actually called World Championship because the AFL and NFL hadn't merged yet. They merged the third year. But my dad says, you want to go? And of course, I'm 12. What do I think? Yes, I want to go. It's the Green Bay Packers with Bart Starr and that whole.
Oh, yeah.
I'm 12 years old. And they're playing, I think they're playing Oakland at the time, the Raiders at the time. And we didn't have tickets. We go down to the Orange Bowl. My dad buys 2 tickets. Guy's selling 2 tickets. And I'll never forget, he comes up to me and he goes, son, do you really want to go? I got to pay extra money for these tickets. Of course, I'm 12. Dad, I got to go. I want it. Yeah. He said, I'm getting ready to pay more than the face value. I said, how much are they? He said, he wants $20 a ticket. Face value was $16. But anyways, so I'm that kid. I'm that kid who just grew up playing sports, loving it, being around it, and went off, played a little bit of college ball. And when I got out I knew I wanted to coach, and there was no coaching major. You couldn't major in coaching. I was, physical education major. Got out, started coaching high school ball, and really loved it. Loved coaching high school. I think my first year I coached. I was JV football coach. I was the head track coach, JV basketball coach, and the cross country coach. I got married that first year and coached 4 sports. You can imagine that. After year 1, my wife goes, "You pick one or pick me," but we're not doing the 4-sport thing. And I loved it. And years later, I had an opportunity to go to Florida State as a grad assistant with Coach Bowden. Coach Bobby Bowden was in his, I think, 3rd year.
Okay.
And I ended up spending 18 years in Tallahassee. We have 4 sons; they were all born there. And it was the greatest time. I wasn't always coaching. I coached, but I also went to work for the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. That was part of my journey. Okay. But I just had this, I saw in a man this ability to coach. And I use the term now, capture hearts. I didn't use that term back then, but I was very young. Yeah. And like a lot of people, you leave what you love doing because somebody else tells you can make a lot of money. And so I left to chase some other things that were sport related, but not coaching. And I was miserable, and I was literally miserable, making more money, doing things that, the world says is better. But I couldn't identify what is it about the coaching that I love so much. I just couldn't find it in other places. And I was 40 years of age and had moved my family down to Orlando, and I was working for Disney. Disney was building a big new, can you imagine this? They were building a big new sports complex. This is 20 something years ago because they knew what was getting ready to happen with youth and travel ball. Yeah. And the whole sport tourism. They were on the front end because they're a family-based company, and I went to work for them. And at 40, I lost a major contract with them, and I lost a job, lost a contract, which means I wasn't renewed. And for the first time, I was unemployed at 40, and I got 4 sons, and we're living down here in Central Florida. And I began to ask the questions: what do I really love to do? What do I really love to do? And it always came back. I love coaching high school ball. I love being with Coach Bowden. I loved all that. So at 40, I went back, buddy. And we're opening up a new suburban high school here in where I live, typical just growth in Florida like you all have in Denver. And the football coach and that was a good friend of mine, and he hires me, and I'm doing the same job at 40 that I was doing at 22.
Oh wow!
The only difference was I had a new framework. I had a new focus, a new set of lens. And he had gone through some broken relationships in his life. I had lost my job, and he was 50 at the time, and I was 40. I'll never forget what he said. He said, "Jeff, if I get a head job, I'm going to do it right." And we both talked about what it meant to do it right. And it came down to this relationship aspect of the people you deal with. And so everything we did, we just asked a very simple question. Why do we run this drill? Why do we meet with these parents? If we couldn't answer the why, we didn't do it. And it was the first time I had really intrinsically, or contemplatively gone inside of myself and asked, why do I do? Because it made me then begin to verbalize what I loved about coaching. And what we saw there in about a 4 or 5 year period, it was a school that wasn't very athletic in the world of football, but the kids just played exceptionally hard, and we won a bunch of games. But more importantly, we saw a sense of beauty come back into sport. People wanted to be a part of something that was greater than the scoreboard. Though the scoreboard counts, it really does. I like to win. Winning's more fun than losing. And I got so intrigued that I went back to school. I called my major professor because, when I was a grad assistant at Florida State, I got a master's degree, but I don't remember a class I took. Because when you're a grad assistant, you're coaching about 80 hours a week and they make you go to class. But now I had a question, and she says, why don't you ask that question? Why don't you look at the role and the aspect of the coach? Why do they have such importance? What is it about coaching? So that's what I did for 7 years. As I was coaching, I went back to school and studied that. And so out of that came the framework of 3D. And so that's where it came. So it didn't come out of some intellectual being that says, I got it all together and I done figured it out and I'm going to write a book on it. No, it came out of my own woundedness, trying to figure out what I couldn't identify in my own life. And literally that's what was born. 3D was kind of born from that experience.
Interesting. And 3D starts with with the physical aspect, or like the fundamentals, which I like is I actually cited your 3D Institute for a paper I just wrote for one of my classes I'm taking with organizational leadership. We got an A, just so you know, low A, but that's my fault, not your fault. With the idea that a lot of that with the coaching is very similar to like a business aspect, whereas like you start off with the fundamentals and like, say you want to talk about sales or accounting, it's like you have to know your job. Right. What are the skills needed to do it? But then above that, you go to psychology. Right. And then above that is like the heart or the passion or the holistic. Yes. So what got you thinking about the psychological part of coaching?
Well, when we put it together, I'd grown up you'd see coaches that knew sport well. They knew the sport well, the fundamentals of sport, whether it was the weight room, whether it was the X's and O's, whether it was, and they were good at that. But there seemed to be a big piece missing. There was always a big piece missing. But if you couldn't do that, you weren't going to survive in the business. And so that's why it's not so much the foundation of 3D, but it is the most important thing to start with. We did. But see, everything in the first dimension, we teach it at the university. I'm a university professor. So what I teach at a public university, and we have a coaching degree, and I teach the 3D concept to the kids. And they get it early on and realize that if you can measure it, then somehow you can evaluate it. So everything in the first dimension is very much, whether you're lifting a weight or running or jumping or throwing, it can be measured against something. So you can always tell increase or performance increase or betterment. So everything in the first, and so that's why everybody kind of hangs there, because it's measurable. Yeah. But we all know that we're relational people. And so the idea of a second dimension is when you think about applied psychology, it's what do you do with the people you work with? And Coach Bowden was absolutely magical. I couldn't identify it. I hadn't quantified it in any way. But boy, people used to say if people just love playing for him, the mamas of the players would love for their boys to go there. You'd always hear this deeper intrinsic value. And so I began to realize somehow we need to break that down. And so when you look at applied psychology, it's out there and there's actually applied pieces, but I don't want to say nobody. It's just hard to put together because it's non-measurable. It has to be seen. So if you say a team comes together and plays as one, we'll use a term like they play with one heartbeat. Yeah. Well, or they play with great heart. Well, you can't. A heart is an organ. You're not talking about the left ventricle or the right atrium. What do you mean by that? So second dimension becomes very vague as far as measurement. But when you see it, you go, I get it. What we were able to do is we just took the applied psychology concepts and put them in a solidity form so a coach could then have a plan to put it together. Like team cohesion. Dr. Albert Carey, he passed away a few years ago. He spent 28 years of his life, University of Western Ontario, say, how do you put a team together? I use this example, you have a group of athletes and, 1 year they just come together and they play as one and they exceed all your expectations. And a few years later, you get a group of kids and they're maybe even better in the first dimension athletically, but they never come together and play as one. And you coach them both the same. What happened? Well, you kind of got lucky with that first group because Dr. Karen said there's a couple of second dimension deals with social people. Here are some strategies to do that if you will do these in combination with what you do in the first dimension, it will always make the team come together and play as one. And so we took those concepts, and they're great concepts, this individual relational and group relational, and we just put them in a concrete form so a coach can say, wow, I'm not doing those two. Sometimes you can get lucky and they just happen because sometimes people just happen to mesh well. But coaches don't want to be people of luck. So the second dimension is just looking at things. How do you motivate intrinsically? We know that when somebody wants to do it from the inside, nothing wrong with extrinsic rewards, but when you really want to do it from within, you'll always do it better and longer and with a greater sense of intensity. So why wouldn't we put that together? That's all we did. We put it together in coaching terms so they could say, you know what? I'm not doing these. I now need to do these. So that's what second dimension is. Second dimension is the applied psychology with actual concepts that when you look at a group of people, if you say they're not coming together as one, or maybe they're not intrinsically motivated, or maybe they're too flat. Sometimes we talk about intensity, they're too flat, or they're playing too hard, they're not playing relaxed. All these terms we use, you can always identify the problems in the second dimension. But what's your strategy? What are you going to do to kind of fix it? And that's what second dimension is.
Yeah, identifying the second dimension reminds me like kind of identifying good music.
Yes, that's correct.
It's like you and I might both disagree. Like you can tell what music is, and everyone can tell when it's bad. Right. But when it's good, a lot of people have different opinions on it.
That's right. That's exactly right.
So
yeah, and the third dimension is just what I had to go through, and that's this internal drive, this passion, this purpose, this call. I want to do something that really touches my heart, my soul. So it becomes very self-consumed, but not in a bad way. It's like, what do I do that from this intrinsic center of who I am? Some people say your soul, your heart. This internal say, I really want to do this because it really touches who I am. So people will tell me all the time, so the driver really becomes the third dimension, actually becomes the driver to become better at the second and first dimension. So some people will tell you that, we have the pyramid inverted. Yeah. And technically that's right. But when you introduce it into the culture, it's the first dimension you have to start with.
Yeah.
Because everybody's there or they don't even last in the profession. So that's why it's not in that order.
No, it's great. And then, like I said, with relating this to like the business world, and you guys said that you guys are starting the next coming up guys at the 3D Institute are working on the business model for that. Yes. Or maybe what's the correct term for that? The business.
Yes, actually called 3D business and 3D education. We got schools that want to do it for their educational concept, and anybody that's in a leadership position. I'll give you one story. It's just a very quick story. Whenever we're doing a clinic or a workshop or something, it's not unusual for somebody to come up afterwards and say, this applies to anything in life, and it does. And by the way, I didn't write this. I didn't create this. This has been around for thousands of years. Mm-hmm. A good coach, what us coaches do, we go to a clinic, right? We go to a clinic and we watch this, this coach has won a bunch of games, or he or she, and they'll give us a nugget that will, come back, and then we'll put it into our game plan or our practice schedule, and we claim it as ours,
I don't know if you've ever done this, but like, do you ever name drills or plays after, like, I call it like in basketball, we're going to call this offense Duke or North Carolina.
Yes.
Because it also like, we're running, like when the kids are struggling, the parents are like, they're running Duke's offense. So
exactly. Exactly. And so, you take it and you make it your own. It's hilarious. In education, we call that plagiarism, but in coaching, it's legal. You can take something else and make it your own. So 3D is, I didn't do the research, and I always like to make sure people understand that. I love research, but what I did is applied the research in a conceptual manner or framework.
Okay.
say it. So it's so people can understand it and be able to do it. And that's why. So we were presenting, and this person came up afterwards, and he runs a major car dealership. I think has 3 or 4 car dealerships in a major metropolitan area. And he came up, and we were just talking about one of the strategies in second dimension of how you intrinsically motivate people where they really want to do it. And one of those is one of the things we call a spotlight drill. In fact, got it from a guy out in Colorado, Rod Olson, who's a dear friend. That was the guy that kind of put this together. And spotlight drills, very simply, at the end of practice. At the end of a practice, coaches are done. We're all finished. And, usually the last thing we do is you got some administrative stuff, and you tell them the last thing we do is we bring up an athlete, whoever that athlete is. That person stands, and every other athlete then has to speak into the heart of that athlete. And the question is very simple. What does this person bring to this team that makes this team better? And the only rule is it cannot be a first dimension answer. So you can't say they got a great jump shot, they run fast, they got 30 receptions, you can't. So it makes the kids have to think, what is it? And so they're looking into this person.
Interesting.
And it's amazing what comes out of these kids' mouths. I mean, just amazing. And of course, you got all these, so everybody at the end of practice is not thinking about themselves. They're thinking about this individual. Now, the individual can't say anything. All they can do is receive it. You ought to see what happens to this individual as far as their performance. I don't care if they're a second team player, they're the best stud team on your player, or they're whatever, they're a role player. It's unbelievable when you intrinsically motivate and they realize that inside of me, I have brought something to this team. But see, we don't, our culture doesn't teach that well. We don't verbalize that because, again, it's non-measurable, but it's very real. And it's incredible what happens. That's the last thing we do. So now when they dismiss, the conversations are, the parents that are all standing around, those moms and dads that come to practice, they're astonished because they've heard, it only takes us about 10 minutes, but they've heard players talk about the value of another human being, and that human being receives it. And it's unbelievable how it creates a sense of oneness. So this business guy, we were doing a whole clinic on this, and the business guy came, and so he went back and says, I'm going to put this in my sales meeting. I've never done this. Our sales meetings are strictly that. They're sales meetings, first dimension. And you better be good at sales. You better know how to sell and what the price and cost and all that. And he started doing this at the end of his sales meeting. And he told us, he says, years later, he says, I do this, and my retention rate with my salesmen and salespeople are incredible. They don't want to leave. Our sales have gone up. And all I can say is it's based on we intrinsically do something for people to be recognized. There's nothing wrong with extrinsic motivation. We all want to get paid and rewarded and all that. But there's something so much deeper. He says it has brought a sense of unity within the sales department like I've never seen.
That's awesome.
It's just something so simple. But
you know what I like about that, and especially with coaching, is that I call it pronoun leadership. Like you have all these leadership books out there where they all talk about like you have to care, you do all these things, but they don't really give any practical.
Right.
It's like, and so this is the spotlight drill is a practical drill that you could run at a sales meeting at the end of a practice.
Absolutely.
And so, it has clear definitions. It's like, hey, we're not talking about, hey, we like you because of your sales numbers.
Right.
It's saying, so it gives you some barriers there, and it makes like you said, the person, the coworker, or the teammate think. Where it's like I call it pronoun leadership, where they just talk about big ideas that are like, they sound great, but how do we do it?
Right.
Because it doesn't give you any real, everyone talks like, I don't want to name names, but it's not, you don't have to, go too far down the Barnes and Noble leadership reading list to find pronoun leaders, if not more than,
That's
so
right.
That is one thing I love about like the spotlight drill in specific.
And you hit it. It's an applied concept. So anybody can go watch somebody and say that team doesn't play well, or that business, they don't seem to gel. They're not together. You're right. You can identify the issue. And that's step one. You got to identify the issue. Now, then the next step is, what do I do about it? So that's what it is. But it becomes an internal concept because now it's dealing with relationships. And so you're dealing with people intrinsically, not just their extrinsic value of what they bring to the company. That's what makes it very unique. That's why it's kind of hit a home run, because it's given solidity to what you just said. You identify a problem. Now you have a strategy. What's
interesting too is like, I'm sure you've probably met this hurdle too, is like with parents going, hey, there's an issue with my kids, whether it's playing time or whatever, and they're always looking at the first or the fundamentals, when as a coach you're going, I'm trying to fix something that's more in that second or third level.
That's right.
It's like their fundamentals are fine or close enough, or
right.
I coach at a small school, so sometimes like kids' fundamentals weren't great, but like, oh, we need bodies and we need people to play, and you're athletic enough. We'll fix the fundamentals eventually.
Right.
It's like, but like, if we can get if you have the passion to play, we can teach you how to make a layup.
That's right. That's right. And we have to be able to identify. That's usually how we start the workshops, by asking coaches, are you tired of the over-involved parent, the non-involved parent, the entitled kid that's all about me? We ask those simple questions. And as soon as you ask that, all the heads come up. Now they said, this is a clinic I want to come to, because they're talking about the issues of second dimension that I deal with. First dimension can always be fixed, and you can always get better at it as a coach. You never stop growing in the first dimension. But there's so much information out there. We're getting kids bigger, better, faster, stronger, and that's good. That's all good. But most of the issues, in fact, you'll never hear this. You're a basketball guy, Rob. You'll never hear a basketball coach go, you know what? I'm done. I'm not coaching basketball anymore because I don't like basketball. You will never hear that. But you will hear, I'm getting out of this because I can't deal with second dimension issue. The non-involved parent, the entitled kid. It's always because he asked the coach, well, coach, what's your strategies to deal with that? And that's where we find they're stuck.
Oh, I 100%. I can relate to that. Like when I was a varsity coach, I would joke that 80% of my time now wasn't actually coaching.
Right.
Because all of a sudden you're doing the administration stuff, the prep. I mean, all these things you're going. Like I have a good friend who's a coach at another school. Is like, we always joke, if we ever got back into coaching, it's like, I'd go back to junior high. It's like you could actually coach and be with the kids and stuff like that. But when you're the varsity coach and you're running 3 teams plus a junior high program or whatever.
Right. That's exactly right.
Probably dealt with that with football positions. At some point you're just
it does.
I just want to help.
Go ahead.
But yeah, it's like, so with all, you just want to get back to, the enjoyment of watching kids be successful.
That's right. Yeah. There's a real tragedy going on in our country right now. The CDC, in fact, when we talk about a pandemic and all that, epidemic is youth sports with the over-involved, the over-involved kids, or, the idea that we're not allowing kids to play anymore. We're creating the miniature adult version, and very detrimental, what you just said, when everything's a performance-based culture. I am who I am because I'm the best 12-year-old shortstop, that creates, we know that creates some real detrimental concepts in the life later on when we lose the joy of playing the game. That's one of the things we spend a lot of time talking about, is regaining the joy of playing the game. We've taken sports and made it, we actually use the word play. We say, what position do you play this Friday night? Who do you play? If I remember right, the umpire always says play ball before the first pitch.
Right.
But somehow we've made it a work. We've taken this performance-based culture and we pressed it down to a younger and younger age. And when you do that, you're creating some real, you ought to see it, overuse injury, psychological burnout, 400% increase in anti-anxiety and antidepressant drugs because of this performance-based culture that we live in. And so we talk about that. Winning is fun. It is more fun to win, but we got to, we have to have strategies to remind ourselves that the game is still to be played. Yeah. And when you play with great joy, I got real tickled when, Baylor won the national basketball championship last year, not this past year. The coach, great coach, the whole thing was joy. He says, we're going to play with a sense of joy. And they did. And it was fun to watch.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that was there. I got married in the last 2 years, so my ability to watch games and follow as much has been different, which is fine. It's not a complaint. It's just one of those, like, you got to set different priorities. And
does your wife listen to this podcast?
Sometimes. It's either her or my parents are the ones who are listening.
Right. Okay. Well, you said the right things. I'm proud of you.
Well, thank you. Well, yeah, no, it's just like we ask our players too, is to make adult decisions sometimes when they can't do everything.
Right.
And they got to make a choice, like if they're going to play or not, or do other things, and you just kind of go, well, it's a decision they got to make. And sometimes it's the adult decision. And then even in your 40s, sometimes you got to look at everything you have on your plate and you go, what can I do and what can I do?
That's exactly right. We know that one of the second dimension concepts is the idea of emotions. Emotions are just a response to performance. I can't sit here and say, Rob, get mad right now. Just get mad. Something has to happen, and then your reaction makes you mad or angry or happy or glad or whatever it's going to be. So it's a response to performance. So interesting that we notice that in a lot of sports now, you don't see a lot of smiles. You just don't. I mean, you see these pictures of athletes that got this, this grimace on their face. They're shot for their, for their Instagram or web pages. It's got this mean looking face, and you wonder, where did that come from? In fact, one of our local sports writers just wrote a great column on it. And the idea is that when you look at the emotions, there's one emotion that when that emotion is, it's a response now, so you can't make it happen. It's a response. But when it is responded, when it does happen, we know that performance goes way up. Performance, that whatever you do, you will do it at the very best. Whatever your skill set is, you will max out at your skill set. And that's the emotion of joy. Mm-hmm. Joy is an emotion that when it happens will allow you to do the best that you can do. And I always relate this to, when you first met your wife and you were dating, the joy of being together. You would do anything to be together. I mean, that's what happens when joy, because joy is very much related to love. Love becomes kind of the motor and joy becomes the outspurt. And so we know that. So coaches know that. They know when a team plays with great joy. So when you see a team not playing with great joy, when it's become that work ethic where they're just, the word grind is a terrible word. We have taken that word and we've edified it like it's something great. Grind's what you do to corn and wheat. Yeah. Not what you do to a human being. But when we know they play with great joy, but then the question is, if they're not playing with great joy, what do you do? Right. And that's what 3D is. It's strategies for coaches that you look at the issue and you go, we got an issue here. What's a strategy? And so we unpack that whole thing for coaches to be able to take a look. And it's just taking the research of joy and what you can do to help create joy. Again, an outflow of something that you do as a coach.
Which makes sense in the coaching or business world, where if you have people that are enjoying what they're doing,
yes,
it's that much, it's that much easier to make the other phone call to the customer, or it's that much easier to do the extra rep or to get the extra shots up or whatever it is.
It's no doubt. It's unbelievable the power of joy. And you use the word enjoy, which just means there's joy in that person to enjoy. I enjoy that. Mm-hmm. And so we ask, if that's a major motivator to increase performance, then leader, what are you doing to create an atmosphere of joy? You can't make people joyful, but what you can do is you can create strategies by which the outflow or the emotion becomes joy. Now you got an audience, because that's non-measurable. We say this all the time. 3D is, let's go back. So years ago, coaching, let's see, the U.S. Olympic Committee, the National High School Federation, and NCAA, three major organizations got together and they wrote these standards of coaches, is what we teach at university. They wrote all these standards, but their opening statement says coaching is much an art as it is a science.
Oh, yeah.
And I love that. And so I ask people all the time, you got a degree. A lot of people got a degree from college. You got a Bachelor of Science or Bachelor of Arts. You know the difference. Master of Arts, Master of Science. Most people say, I've never really thought about that. See, science is that which you can measure. So your original degrees in the U.S. were things like medicine and engineering, and so forth, things that you could actually measure. They were important. And then people realized, wait a minute now, but what do we do about the expression of things? Art and photography, and of course, graphic arts now and everything that we do. And that's where the art came. See, art cannot be measured. It can only be expressed. Yep. An artist has a blank palette. There's nothing there. We can't do anything with it. And then he or she draws this beautiful painting. And we go, that's beautiful. But it was not there before. We could not recognize it until it was actually put together. And then we jump in the first dimension. What do? We make duplicates, replicates. And then we sell, copy 38 and copy 39. But there's only one original.
Right.
And that's the beauty of art. Art is the expression of. And so what we try to do as coaches and leaders, when you begin to understand that, now you want to do strategies where now you're painting a beautiful picture, because as it unpacks itself, people begin to see the beauty of it. And guess what they want to do? They want to be a part of it.
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't understand why Coach Bowden spent 28 years at Florida State. And I think in 20-something years, he had 4 coaches leave. 4 coaches.
Really? That's it?
That's it. And, and of course, I'm there and I'm going, why is that? Now I look back and realize because of his 3D leadership, people just wanted to be a part of it. And they realized how good it was. And then they would look around and go, it's not as good over there. I don't want to leave this. This is beautiful. So we tell people this is a great way to do retention as well for your employees, which is a big deal right now.
Oh, absolutely.
Try to hang on to the good folks.
Oh, yeah. No, my wife works in HR, so I hear those stories regularly.
I do. Yeah. So, cool.
No. So, and then it seems like in a world where, like you said, like first level fundamentals, skills, that's why information widely known.
Or you can get it, right. Absolutely.
It's really easily accessible. So
right, it is, especially today.
And so like we were talking to some people, some friends, and like the coaching differences we got between guys like Coach K and the next tier. And Coach K might not be the greatest example because he's in an elite level, but it's usually like in basketball, it's the network and the players you have. And we always joke, great players make great coaches.
Yeah.
It makes it a little easier to coach when you have, especially a 6'9" guy in basketball and everyone in the league is 6'2" or whatever.
Right.
Got a distinct advantage there, but it's one of those where, it's like, it's the network of people they have great, but like what they're doing something different than a lot of other programs.
Yeah. We tell everybody, this is not a prosperity gospel. This is not become a 3D coach or 3 business leader and you'll become the best. If your athletes, if every one of your athletes are just better than my athletes and you're a solid first dimensional coach with no relational skills, you're probably still going to beat me. But what 3D does is allow you to get the ultimate performance out of whatever level skill set, which you can. Yeah. Can I give you one Coach K story?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I've got
Coach K and I go way back, by the way.
Well, good. You'll love this story because there's a lot of concepts that people don't know about him. Like, for instance, when the athletes come to Duke, the first thing they have to do is he brings everybody in that works in Cameron Indoor Arena, and they have to learn their name. He has to learn the name of kids have to learn the name of every custodian, people. Because these are important people that don't get recognized, and so that's a powerful thing. So my oldest son, I was at Florida State, and we had just joined the ACC. And my oldest son, who's now like 38, 39, I think he was 9 or 10, and maybe 11, I don't know. But anyways, he became a ball boy for FSU basketball team.
Okay.
And so I'd go to games. After games, I'd have to go down. He'd be putting the balls in the rack, sweeping the floors and all that. And we happened to be playing Duke for the first time. Duke had come to Tallahassee. We just joined the ACC. And Florida State beat them.
I was going to say, Duke always struggles at FSU.
I know, exactly. We hit a 3-point. We hit a 3-point from the corner to win. It was a nationally televised game. Dick Vitale was there and the whole ESPN crew. And so I'm walking down. My son's kind of finishing up, and the Dick Vitale and somebody else had caught Coach K before he'd gone to the locker room, asking about the game or something. And so as I'm walking downstairs, I had to go down, where the floor is, out the doors. Coach K comes walking off the floor. Now, he hadn't been with the team yet. Mm-hmm. He just got beat on a 3-point jumper, right? And but he's done this interview. And as I'm walking by, I walk with my son, who's got a shirt that says FSU ball boy. And Coach K stops him and he goes, "So you were the ball boy today?" And he goes, "Yes, I was." He says, "I just want to tell you did a great job. I watched you. You did a great job." He goes, "What's your name?" And he goes, "Bo Duke." Bo is his nickname, but Duke obviously is my last name. And so Coach K goes, "Oh, well, you must be a big Duke fan." Of course, my little 11-year-old goes, "Oh, no, I'm a Florida State fan." Got his, garnet gold shirt on. And Coach K looks at me and he goes, "Are you his dad?" And I go, "Yes, I am." He goes, "Would you mind if you came in with your son? Would he like to meet the team?"
Wow.
So my son goes, "Yes." So we go in the locker room. They're sitting in a little U shape. Now remember, they just got beat. Yeah. They just got beat. He's getting ready to chew them out. Talk about, I don't know, whatever he's going to do. He goes, "Guys, before I talk to you about the game, I want to introduce you to Bo Duke. Bo served you this game, all game. He was on one of the baskets, wiping the floor, putting the balls in and all that kind of stuff. I want you all to give him a big hand." They all gave him a big hand. He looked at him. He says, "Would you like to get an autograph from the team?" And of course, Bo goes, "Yes." And the SI guy hands him they got the picture of the team and they go around. Of course, it's Christian Laettner, Bobby Hurley, Grant.
Wow.
It was that group.
Wow.
And now my son's 38, 39 years old. You tell me two things. What's one possession that he still has?
That picture right there.
And who's his favorite coach?
Oh,
it's incredible when you have the heart to just capture the moment of people who they are. What it does is it motivates way beyond just again, I don't know what he told the players after we left. I don't know if they played good or bad. I don't know. But boy, he set the priority well. That, hey, we got beat, but people still were here working for you and serving you in what you did. It was a powerful moment. Powerful moment.
Wow, that's a great story.
Yeah.
That's one of those things like, okay, like you said, I'm going to steal that next time I coach.
Yeah. Exactly. They're just good priorities, which is good.
No, absolutely. If someone wanted to find more with the 3D Institute, what's the best place for them to look?
So we put this concept together. I didn't do this to create an institute. I did it because I needed to find out some things about me. And so University of Central Florida, I'm not a professor by trade, but they came to me and said, hey, you got your doctorate degree in coaching. And well, I got a doctorate degree. I didn't have a doctorate degree in coaching. I got a doctorate degree, but I did my study of coaching. They said, we got a bunch of kids who want to coach. And we don't have a degree. Would you be interested in writing a degree? Which is hilarious. So 18 years ago, I write this degree. I'm a football coach writing a degree, and we're in our 18th year of teaching this. And so I was able to frame this in one of the classes early on called three-dimensional coaching, which was just syllabus, putting it together. And different people started grabbing it, just like you're doing, got a grabbing and started using, hey, this applies here. Next thing I know, I'm around traveling and doing, and we realized, wow, this really does hit a sweet spot. I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm a terrible business person, so people better than me. In fact, it was hilarious. The guy at Disney that had to fire me when I didn't get the contract, he leaves Disney and helps me write the business plan.
Oh, yeah.
And we started a thing called the 3D Institute. And I don't run anymore. I'm getting close to retirement. Wes Simmons is our CEO. It's he lives in St. Joe, Missouri. But it's the 3dinstitute.com. And the training is there, whether it's online training, whether you want to we're in like 18 countries. We got thousands of coaches. We got large organizations like the Fellowship of Christian Athletes and other groups that use this. We want it to be a giveaway. We're not trying to develop a business to make money. We developed it to be able to spread the news. And what we say is 3D is a framework built on a foundation of purpose. So it's a framework so you can look at yourself and go, you build this frame, you build a house, and you're really good in this room. You got all the furniture, but you're not sure about this room. Mm-hmm. So we want you to be able to have a place where you can go and get the information that you need, because we know that especially in sport, which is where it started, the statement, one coach will impact more people in 1 year than the average person does in a lifetime. And it's not because the coach is more important. It's just that we're enthralled with sport as our culture. Mm-hmm. It's the number one thing we watch, number one thing we do discretion-wise. We don't have to play sport. People don't realize this. There's not one state, local, or federal law that says you have to play sport. But yeah, can you imagine a school without a sport team or a club without a sport team? Man. So we have this, and there's a lot of reasons why sport has become so big. We don't have time to go into this, but the only person that controls whatever sport does, whatever it teaches, is the coach. You got a lot of people that support sport, and there's a lot of things we do, but whatever it does, whatever it teaches, is all based on this person called coach. If you watch a game on TV, makes no difference. There will always be one camera on one head coach and one camera on the other head coach, and the director in the truck. Whenever something happens on the field, the pitch, or the court, whether it's good or bad, you automatically, just watch next time, you automatically get close to the coach. What was his or her reaction?
Oh, yeah.
A Little League game's no different. A parent goes and they're watching their kid, and when something happens to their kid, good or bad, the first thing they will see, what the coach do. And so, man, we realize these coaches have tremendous impact and tremendous influence. That's why this became a ministry. And we say a ministry, we don't mean it in a religious term. Ministry just means to engage in the needs of others. Yeah. That we want this to be a part of it. So people way beyond me that are doing a great job have created the Institute. So it's called the 3D, 3 is in the number, dinstitute.com. And whether it's a workshop, whether it's an online training, it's really good. And I'm not saying it's good because I did it. These are people that have done so much better with me from the tech world.
No, very good. Yeah, no, what you said reminds me of the first coaching job I got. I think I was telling you before we started recording, as a 20-year-old coach coaching junior high basketball, and the head coach of the team goes, there's 3 titles a man can have that they can't take it for granted: husband, father, and coach.
That's correct.
And I was like, at that time, I was like, well, I only got one of those, but and I'm always respected that title.
I did. I tell young people all the time, once you're called coach, how long are you called coach for? The rest of your life.
Yep.
The rest of your life, you're called coach. Isn't that amazing? And that's a title that literally can be earned, just like you said, because you show up and you got a team, and they're yours. And it's a very endearing title. It really is.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's so much fun over the years then to see the kids grow up, have families, and it's one of those things you don't think about in your 20s.
No.
When you're starting coaching, that's for sure.
One of my favorite lines is Joe Ehrman, who wrote Season of Life and Inside Out Coaching, great guy. He has a great line when he was coaching. He said, parents will come up and say, he was coaching football at the time. He said, the parent would say, well, how are the boys going to be, talking about, the next team? Yeah. How are the boys going to be? He says, I don't know. Ask me in 20 years. And that's a powerful answer.
Oh, absolutely.
So what I teach now, hopefully will have lifetime values into who they are as adults, either as you said, either as fathers or husbands, or, if you're coaching women's sport, obviously mothers, daughters, so forth. So powerful.
Absolutely. We'll leave it with that. Dr. Coach Jeff, or Coach Dr. Jeff.
Jeff.
Thank you so much for the time. I truly appreciate it.
Rob, thank you. Bless you, my friend. Have a great day. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, man.